There are quiet moments in life, often at the edge of night, when the world slows down, where silence doesn't feel so peaceful anymore. What once felt calm and comforting now feels dense, like the walls are gently pressing in. You sit in that old chair you've always loved, and instead of rest, your mind begins to stir. Thoughts drift in, small worries, memories that ache, visions of a future you can't quite grasp, and without realizing it, anxiety has quietly taken a seat beside you. But here's something we often forget. Anxiety isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's not proof of weakness, failure, or punishment. What if instead it's a signal pointing towards something you've overlooked? In the Buddha's teachings, suffering, including this restless anxiety, is not an enemy to defeat, but a message to listen to. It's a guide, a quiet companion that leads us back to the heart of what matters most. We've been taught to hide our discomfort, to bury it, escape it, or drown it in noise. But Buddhism offers another way. It suggests that the very thing we try to avoid might be the key to our freedom. That anxiety, when met with understanding, becomes our teacher. Especially as we grow older and life becomes more still, we are given space. Space to feel, to reflect, to truly see ourselves. And it's in this space that something sacred begins. Not a battle, but a deeper journey inward. So today, let's look at one gentle truth, an ancient insight from Buddhist wisdom. It won't make anxiety disappear, but it can change how we relate to it. This idea has helped monks in mountain temples, soldiers in moments of fear, and everyday people, just like you and me, find peace in the middle of their inner storms. If your thoughts ever feel like a prison, if you've carried worry like a silent burden for too long, stay with me. This isn't about pretending everything is okay. It's about looking clearly at what is and finding freedom there. Because you are not broken, you are not alone. You are simply being invited to see your anxiety in a new way. Let's begin by turning toward it, not away. By sitting with it gently and seeing what it has to teach us. 1. The root of anxiety. Attachment and aversion. Anxiety doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It has roots, quiet, deep, and often unseen. In Buddhist wisdom, these roots have two names: attachment and aversion. These aren't just concepts, they're habits of the heart. As we go through life, especially as we grow older, these habits become more noticeable. Attachment is the part of the mind that clings tightly. It holds on to the things we love, our routines, the people close to us, our sense of control, and the comfort of the familiar. And when change comes, as it always does, this grasping turns into fear. A quiet voice says, "Please, don't take this away." Then there's aversion, the urge to push away what we don't like. Pain, sickness, loneliness, even the natural process of aging. We try to resist these things, hoping that by pushing hard enough, we can keep them at a distance. But both holding on and pushing away are exhausting, and more than that, they don't work. The Buddha taught that anything that arises will also pass away. Everything changes. Our bodies, our relationships, even the emotions we think will never end. It's our refusal to accept this truth that feeds anxiety. Let me share a story. A friend of mine, Tom, was a retired Navy veteran. Every morning at 6 a.m., he walked the lake trail near his home. It was part of his rhythm, his way of staying grounded. But after a hip injury, he had to stop. It wasn't just a routine he lost. It felt like he'd lost a part of who he was. His anxiety grew. Mornings became painful. The stillness reminded him of what he could no longer do. One day, over tea, I asked gently, "Tom, what are you holding on to?" He looked out the window and said quietly, the version of me that could still move freely. This is what the Buddha meant. Our suffering doesn't come from the changes themselves, but from how tightly we hold on to the way things used to be. When we cling to the past or reject the present, anxiety finds space to grow. It whispers, "You're losing control." But here's the truth that can set us free. We never truly had control to begin with. Just like the lotus that rises from muddy water, peace can bloom from acceptance. We don't need to keep life exactly the same. We only need to open our hands, to let go of the constant grasping and resisting, and allow life to be what it is. You are not your habits. You are not your youth. You are not your past. And when you begin to soften your grip on how things should be, on what you think you must have, something shifts. The weight of anxiety starts to lift. As the Dhammapada says, from attachment springs grief, from attachment springs fear, but one who is free from attachment knows neither grief nor fear. So ask yourself gently, what would happen if today, even just a little, you unclench the fists of the mind? Maybe peace isn't in getting back what was lost, but in welcoming what is here, now, too. The thought that frees you. This, too, is just a thought. There comes a moment in life, maybe during a quiet night or in the middle of a busy day, when a thought slips in without warning and settles heavy on the heart. It might whisper, "Something's wrong," or shout, "What if this never gets better?" And before we even notice, we're not here in the present anymore. We're lost inside that thought, caught in a world made of fear and tension. But the Buddha offered a gentle truth, simple but powerful. This, too, is just a thought. Let that sink in. Not every thought we have is true. Not every thought deserves our trust. Some come from old fears. Some are patterns we've carried for years. Others are just the mind doing what it always does, trying to protect, trying to prepare. But a thought, even a strong one, is not a fact. It's just a cloud passing through the sky of the mind. There's a saying from a wise monk, "Don't believe everything you think." Even the thoughts that feel urgent and serious are often just ripples on the surface. When we learn to watch them without grabbing hold, we begin to feel something surprising. Space, calm, clarity. So much of anxiety starts with just one thought, and that thought grows only when we treat it as truth, without question. Let me tell you about Marlene, a 76-year-old woman adjusting to life after her husband passed. She lived alone, and in the quiet, fears started creeping in. What if I fall? What if I forget something important? What if I lose my memory? These fears weren't impossible, but they weren't happening. They were just thoughts, arriving with a racing heart and a restless mind. Marlene began attending mindfulness classes at her local senior center. One day, her teacher asked the group to write down this sentence: "This thought is not me, it is just a thought." At first it seemed silly, but Marlene started using it. Each time fear visited, she whispered the sentence. Slowly, like a knot loosening, her anxiety began to soften. In Buddhism, this practice is called non-identification, the ability to see thoughts for what they are, temporary movements in the mind, not the truth of who we are. Your thoughts are not you. They come and go, like wind moving through trees. Some are helpful, many are not. But none of them define your true self. The practice isn't to fight anxious thoughts or feel bad for having them. The practice is to notice them, to gently say, "Ah, there you are, thought, I see you. But you are not reality, and you are not in control." This may seem small, but it changes everything. You shift from being inside the storm to quietly standing beside it. As the great teacher Ajahn Chah once said, "If you let go a little, you'll have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you'll be free." So next time anxiety rises, try this. Take a breath, soften your heart, and say gently, "This too is just a thought." No resistance, no panic. Just a moment of truth in the middle of the noise. 3. Mindfulness, anchoring in the present moment. Anxiety often starts in small ways: a slight unease while sipping tea, a tightness in the chest while folding clothes, or a nagging feeling that something isn't quite right, though nothing has happened. For many older adults, especially those who live alone or follow quieter routines, this subtle anxiety can slip in like a chill breeze under the door. It's not loud, but it lingers, pulling the mind away from the peace of the present moment into the shadows of past regrets or future worries. But there's a way back. Mindfulness, as taught in Buddhist tradition, offers a path back to the now, back to our bodies, our breath, and to the only place where true peace lives, right here, right now. Mindfulness isn't about clearing the mind or forcing stillness. It's about noticing, gently, lovingly, the sensations in your body, the rhythm of your breath, and the ebb and flow of your thoughts. It's about being where your feet are, instead of getting lost in memories of the past or anxieties about the future. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." And this simple teaching directly addresses anxiety. Anxiety is always trying to pull us forward, into the future, into what might happen, into what we're afraid of. But the present moment asks nothing of us, except that we show up and simply be here. Let me share a story about an elderly man named Frank. Frank was a retired carpenter, quiet and kind. After his wife passed, the silence in his home became unbearable. Small worries turned into spirals. What if I forget something? What if I fall and no one is there? What if I become a burden to my children? These thoughts took root in the long, lonely hours. Each breath became an anchor, each step a meditation, each moment a chance to return to peace. Frank practiced 5 minutes a day, sitting in his garden, hands on his knees, eyes soft, breath steady. He didn't try to clear his mind. He simply watched his thoughts pass by, like clouds in the sky, and over time those clouds grew lighter. This is the power of mindfulness. It doesn't promise to remove our challenges, but it teaches us to sit with them without fear. It helps us realize that we are not the storm. We are the sky that holds it. Mindfulness is also forgiving. If you drift into thought, that's okay. The moment you notice, you've already returned. That noticing is the practice. That return is the victory. So, if anxiety visits during the quiet of your day, offer it no fight. Instead, offer your breath. Ground yourself in what you can feel, your feet on the floor, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the rhythm of your inhale and exhale. This isn't about denial or escape. It's about a sacred act of coming back to yourself. As Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor. Try it now. Take a deep breath. Feel it pass through your nose. Feel your chest rise. And as you exhale, gently say to yourself, "I am here, and here is enough." 4. Compassion. The kindness that softens anxiety. There's a voice that often accompanies anxiety, but it's not the voice of the world around us. It's the voice we carry within. The inner critic whispering, "Why are you like this? You should be stronger. You're a burden." Over time, that voice chips away at our spirit, not just with fear, but with shame. In Buddhist teachings, there's a gentle yet powerful antidote to this: compassion, and not just for others, but for ourselves, especially for ourselves. Many older adults grew up in times when emotional needs were overlooked, when resilience meant hiding pain, and when self-sacrifice was considered noble. You took care of others, children, partners, aging parents, while quietly pushing your pain and needs aside. Now perhaps, as life slows down and there's more space to feel, everything you've suppressed rushes in. Anxiety, guilt, grief, regret. But here's the wisdom. Buddhism offers, peace doesn't come from perfection, it comes through tenderness. The Buddha said you, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. These words aren't indulgent, they are a lifeline. Consider Ruth, a 79-year-old woman who had spent her life caring for others. A nurse by profession and a mother by nature, Ruth had always been the strong one, the reliable one. But after retirement and the loss of her sister, Ruth began to experience waves of anxiety. She felt embarrassed. "Why now?" she asked. "I've always kept it together." During a mindfulness retreat at a local community center, a Buddhist teacher invited everyone to place their hands on their hearts and silently repeat the phrase, "May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I accept myself just as I am." At first, Ruth couldn't do it. Her chest tightened and tears welled up. It felt foreign, even selfish. But the teacher gently reminded her, self-compassion isn't about ego. It's about softening. It's about not turning away from your own pain. That moment marked the beginning of Ruth's healing, not because her anxiety vanished, but because she stopped fighting it alone. She began writing letters to herself, forgiving the parts of her that were too tired to keep going, too overwhelmed to explain, too hurt to reach out. Slowly, she started to feel whole again. In Buddhist practice, compassion is considered the medicine of the heart, and like any medicine, it must be taken regularly, especially when suffering arises. Here are some gentle ways to practice self-compassion in daily life. Speak kindly to yourself, especially when you feel afraid or anxious. Replace "what's wrong with me" with "this is hard and I'm doing the best I can." Place your hand over your heart during anxious moments. It's a simple act of care, reminding you that you are not alone. Offer yourself the same grace you would offer a dear friend. If you wouldn't say it to them, don't say it to yourself. Acknowledge your efforts. You've survived so much. You're still learning. That matters. Compassion doesn't fix everything, but it transforms the way we move through everything. It changes anxiety from something that feels like a prison into a path that walks alongside your pain, rather than fighting against it. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "When you love someone, the best thing you can offer is your presence. How can you love if you are not there?" The same is true for ourselves. If we aren't present for our own pain, who will be? So the next time anxiety comes knocking, meet it with kindness. Offer it a cup of tea. Sit beside it. Ask what it needs, not so you can fix it, but so you can hold it gently, like a child who's frightened in the dark. Sometimes all our inner world needs is to know that someone is still listening. 5. The thought that destroys anxiety. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. There are moments, often quiet and piercing, when anxiety wraps itself around us so tightly that we start to believe it defines us. The racing heartbeat, the endless thoughts, the restlessness. They feel less like something we're experiencing and more like who we are. In these moments, it's easy to think, "I am anxious," rather than recognizing that anxiety is merely a passing wave, not the vast ocean of our being. But over 2,500 years ago, the Buddha shared a profound teaching that offers a way to free ourselves from this suffering. A thought so simple, yet so powerful, that it can dissolve anxiety's grip the way sunlight dissolves fog. That thought is, This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am. This phrase isn't about denial. It's about liberation. It doesn't resist anxiety. Instead, it gently lets go of the false belief that we are our suffering. The Buddha's teachings on non-self, as described in the Anatta Lakkhana Sutra, remind us that we are not the thoughts, feelings, or sensations that pass through us. Just as the sky is not the storm, we are not our anxiety. When we cling to fear, thinking it is part of our identity, it gains power. But when we tell ourselves, "This is not me," we reconnect with our true nature, vast, peaceful, and unbound. Let me share the story of Walter, an 82-year-old widower who had been struggling with anxiety ever since his wife passed away. He described it as a gnawing feeling in his chest, a sense of dread he couldn't pinpoint. It would come and go, but when it arrived, it consumed him. "It feels like I'm disappearing into the fear," he once said. One afternoon at a local mindfulness group, the instructor led a meditation based on the Buddha's teaching of non-identification. She guided the group through waves of sensations and emotions, softly repeating the words, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am." Walter sat quietly, hand over heart, silently repeating these words in his mind. As the tension in his chest began to loosen, something shifted within him, not all at once, but enough for him to take a deeper breath. In the weeks that followed, Walter practiced this teaching daily. When anxiety would appear, instead of fighting it or succumbing to it, he would acknowledge it gently. "Ah, here it is again," he'd think. Then he'd breathe deeply and remind himself, "This too shall pass. This is not who I am." Each time, the storm of anxiety became a little less intense. The beauty of this teaching is that it doesn't promise to make anxiety disappear. Instead, it offers freedom within it. The Buddha didn't say we wouldn't face fear or sorrow. What he showed us was how to stop suffering unnecessarily because of them. Let's break the phrase down. This is not mine. This means we don't claim ownership over the emotion. It's not ours to defend or hold on to. It's simply something arising, like a wave on the ocean. This is not me. This points to the deepest truth. We are not defined by our emotions. We are the observer, not the turbulence. We are not broken or flawed. We are the awareness watching everything unfold. This is not who I am. Our identity is not shaped by fear, anxiety, or sorrow. Beneath it all lies our true nature, still compassionate and steady. The next time anxiety knocks at your door, pause and say to yourself, "This is not mine. This is not me. This is not who I am." You may notice something remarkable. The emotion may still be there, but its power to define you will begin to fade. You shift from being inside the storm to becoming the sky that holds it. Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "Feelings come and go like clouds in a windy sky. Conscious breathing is my anchor," and so it is with this thought. It becomes a light in the fog, a compass when you feel lost in your mind. As we grow older, this practice becomes not just helpful, but essential. Aging brings new uncertainties, unexpected loneliness, changing bodies, and the inevitable goodbyes. But none of these diminish who we are. The thought, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," is not just for moments of panic. It's a mantra for liberation, for reclaiming our space, for remembering our essence, peaceful, aware, and eternal. In truth, you were never your anxiety. You are the calm that remains when the wave recedes. You are the sky that holds every passing cloud, and through it all, you are still here. 6. A guided practice, applying this thought in daily life. It's one thing to hear a teaching that stirs the heart, that resonates deeply, like a refreshing breeze through an open window after a long, stuffy silence. But it's an entirely different matter to carry that teaching into the messiness of daily life, where the dishes pile up, the phone rings, the aches remind you of time passing, and the heart, oh the heart, still trembles at times. This is where the real practice begins. And yet it's also where the deepest peace can be found. The Buddha's wisdom was never meant to stay in lofty realms or as abstract ideas. His teachings were meant to be lived right here, in the marketplace, in our homes, on the path through the forest. So the phrase, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," isn't something you save for meditation or spiritual readings. It's something to bring with you into the very fabric of your everyday life. Let's start with a simple but powerful practice, one you can do right now, even as you're listening. Find a quiet space, sit still, or if you're standing, feel your feet firmly touching the ground. Let your body relax just as it is, no need to push or force anything. Take a slow breath in, then gently breathe out. Let your breath feel like a soft hand, calming and grounding you. Now think of something that's been making you anxious. It might be something small, like a nagging worry, or something bigger, a choice, a regret, or a conversation that keeps repeating in your mind. Don't judge it, just hold it gently in your awareness, like a stone resting in the palm of your hand. As you stay with this feeling, quietly say, either out loud or silently in your heart, "This is not mine." Pause, let that settle. Then say, "This is not me." Pause again and notice the space beginning to grow between you and the emotion. Remind yourself, "This is not who I am," and breathe. With each time you say it, feel the hold loosening. Maybe just a little at first, maybe more as you keep going. You're not rejecting the emotion. You're simply observing it without owning it, without becoming it. Now, imagine your breath as a breeze flowing through an open house. It moves through the room of your worry, gently clearing the air, not pushing anything out, just creating space. The walls of the house remain strong and still. That house is you, steady, grounded, complete. The anxious thought is only a visitor. It may stay for a bit, but it doesn't live there, and it doesn't have the keys. This is the power of the practice. Now let's explore where you can bring this into your daily life. Because the truth is, you don't need to be sitting on a meditation cushion or at a retreat to find peace within. You need it at 3 a.m. when you wake up with a heaviness in your chest. You need it when your grown child hasn't called in weeks, and you start to wonder if you did something wrong. You need it when the ache in your joints reminds you that time is passing and not everything is in your hands. In those moments, don't aim for perfection, reach for presence. Breathe in and softly say, "This is not mine." Breathe out, "This is not me." Breathe once more, "This is not who I am." Then gently return to whatever is in front of you. Maybe it's washing the dishes, folding clothes, petting your dog, or simply listening to the wind rustling through the trees outside your window. In this way, the practice becomes part of your day. It's not something separate, it's how you move through life. And here's the beautiful part. The more you do this, the more your nervous system begins to recognize that you are safe now. You're no longer stuck in the past. You're not drowning in what-ifs. You're here, breathing, alive, and whole. Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." This simple phrase, "This is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am," is a bridge that leads you back to that joy. It's a quiet reminder that the real you has never been broken by fear. So the next time anxiety appears, don't run from it and don't push it away. Welcome it like a visitor you no longer fear. Offer it a seat, meet its gaze, and gently remind both yourself and the feeling, this is not who I am. Because the truth is, who you really are is the stillness beneath the storm, the space within the noise, and above all, love, always love, holding everything together. If you've stayed with me this far, quietly listening, heart open, perhaps even a little softened by this journey, then I invite you to pause here and simply breathe. What you've heard today isn't just a teaching, it's a doorway, a gentle hand on your shoulder, reminding you that anxiety is not a failure. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. In many ways, it's a sacred call, a call to look deeper, to let go of what was never yours to carry, and to come back home to yourself. The Buddha never promised a life without storms, but he offered something even more powerful, the tools to stay steady in the midst of them. And one of the most transformative tools is this simple thought: this is not mine, this is not me, this is not who I am. Repeat it as often as you need, when silence feels heavy, when the night stretches long, or when your chest tightens with worry. Say it gently, with kindness, not as resistance, but as a healing touch. And maybe, just maybe, as you keep practicing, you'll begin to see anxiety not as an enemy, but as a teacher, not something to fear or run from, but something that shows you your strength, your resilience, and your beautiful ability to return again and again to peace. So I leave you with this question, dear friend. What might your life become if you stopped holding on to what no longer serves you and start listening to what brings you home? If this message touched your heart, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice, your story, might be the light someone else needs tonight. And if you'd like more reflections like this, rooted in Buddhist wisdom and spoken directly to the soul, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You'll always be welcome here. Until next time, breathe deeply, walk gently, and remember, who you truly are has never been broken, just waiting to be remembered.